Today, how the 8th largest investment bank in America collapsed in 48 hours. I'm Mark, and this is Financial Literacy Hub, where we are bridging the gap between people and finance. Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB, was a rapidly growing bank with a deposit base of mostly startup firms within the once booming tech industry. In fact, over the course of 2020 to 2022, it rapidly tripled in size to hold deposits of $200 billion. However, with the tech industry faltering primarily due to higher interest rates leading to a drying up of their funding and increased difficulty in finding willing investors, the money they had deposited in their bank was increasingly being required to cover their growing costs. Now, SVB, just like all other banks, they don't keep your money in a vault and just leave it there until you want it back. They invest it in the hopes of making big profits and in return give you a portion of that money they made from your money back in the form of interest. So when the largest group of SVB's depositors, tech startups, found themselves in growing financial difficulty, they needed to make more and more withdrawals. Thing is, SVB doesn't have the money on hand to cover its depositors' requests because they've invested it. So SVB goes into a panic. They need funds quickly before they run out of cash and customers realize that they can no longer make withdrawals. Word will quickly get out that SVB may not have the money to cover depositors, and this ironically leads to depositors rushing to the bank, demanding all their money due to the fear of losing everything. This is what's called a run on the bank, any bank's worst nightmare. In a desperate attempt to avoid this, SVB sell some of the assets that they hold, its long-term bonds, and this is where it gets really interesting, and this is where things go spectacularly wrong for SVB. You see, long-term treasury bonds with a maturity of, let's say, 5 years means that the government essentially guarantees a payment to the purchaser. So let's say you buy a bond for $900 and at the end of the term you will receive $1,000. Now you are able to sell this bond, which will, in a matter of time, be worth $1,000. But with interest rates rising since they were purchased by SVB, it doesn't look so attractive for prospective buyers. So in order to sell them, SVB needs to offer them at a discount. Think about it. Why would anyone buy an old bond yielding 3% when they could go out and buy a bond yielding 5% easily today? But in order to get the liquidity or quick cash that it needed, SVB, they decide to sell them at a discount, which along with the loss from the quick sale of other assets, saw them losing $1.8 billion in the process. It gets worse. When this loss was announced, shares of the bank dropped 60%, with investors' fears that the bank was in a weak financial position. This led to even greater fear amongst its depositors, who were worried that SVB might not be able to cover their deposits, which made them rush to the bank in order to try and withdraw all of their money, which in turn drove SVB to need to liquidate even more assets at a loss. But by then it was clear the bank was no longer able to survive and SVB itself was no more. Although the FDIC ensures deposits of up to $250,000 in an effort to shore up confidence in the banking system and to try and prevent contagion to the rest of the financial system, President Biden assures all depositors that deposits will be covered in their entirety. That in itself might have some pretty significant consequences down the road. For more on bonds and simple breakdowns of other sometimes complicated financial concepts, stay tuned.